So today I'm going to be doing a player profile on Mitch Duncan. So I reckon he's a pretty interesting choice. Actually, surprisingly, not many people have got him. But yeah, I'll put the comment up that suggested him right now. So what we're going to do in the video is go through his 2021 season, have a look at the rest of his AFL career. We'll look a little bit at his role, then we'll do pros and cons, and then I'll do my verdict. So anyway, we'll get started. So we'll look at season 2021. So he had a calf injury in the preseason, so he was unable to play like the preseason games as well as rounds 1 and 2. However, he came in for rounds 3 to 9, and he averaged 119.3. In round 10 though, he was subbed off at halftime with concussion, and therefore missed the next game. He came back in round 13, obviously, because Geelong had their bye in round 12, and he scored just 74 points. Then in the next round, round 14, he suffered a PCL injury, so that kept him out of the rest of the regular season, but obviously he came back for finals. Okay, so we'll look at the rest of his history. So in terms of scoring, he made a big leap in 2017 to his best ever average of 109.8. Since then, he's gone 106, 103, another 103, and then 99 in 2021. But really, I reckon those last 2 years, like the averages are really a bit higher, and that is because of some injury-affected games. So in round 6, 2020, he was injured and was subbed off in the first quarter. As a result, he scored just 13. So if we ignore this score, for 2020 he would have averaged 109.7, which is almost his best ever. And even though it's a small sample size, in 2021, without round 10 and round 14, which were both injury affected, he would have averaged 113.6. So also, looking at his injury history, obviously he didn't do very well in 2021, but before that he's been relatively injury clear. So from 2012 to 2020, he actually played 20 plus games in all but one season. So that season was 2015, where he had a foot injury, which kept him out for 9 rounds. So yeah, actually his durability, like a lot of people think it's pretty bad. Of course, it is decently bad because he is coming off the injuries last year. But in terms of his history as a whole, it's really not as bad as people think. So before we get into the pros and cons, just look at a little bit extra around his role. So Mitch Duncan, he mostly just plays outside midfield. So sometimes he starts at half forward, sometimes on the wing. So however, there was an interesting thing that George Supercoach, or I think his name is George FFTV now, he brought up in his Geelong preview video. So what he said was, in last year's elimination final against Port Adelaide, Duncan actually played at halfback, and he looked really good, and I looked it up, he scored 122 points, which is obviously really good. So obviously it's unclear whether he's going to play this role again next year though. So I mean, I think it could largely depend on whether Tom Stewart has like really recovered from his injury super well. So yeah, because Stewart's usually the main guy in that defense of halfback, and I mean obviously he wasn't playing for the last few games of the season and the finals. Okay, so now we get into the good stuff, which is the pros, the cons, and the verdict. So we'll start with the pros. So number 1 is his great scoring. So obviously, as I said before, over that period of rounds 3 to 9 actually, he averaged almost 120. So yeah, and also he pretty much has averaged, I mean obviously he averaged 99 last year, but pretty much between 100 and 110 since 2017. So another pro is the potential role change, as I just said. So, I mean, even though that was only one game where we saw that, he seemed to fit the role really well. And, I mean, if you're playing halfback, you're going to have a decreased chance of injury, because obviously you're going to get more receives and handball receives and uncontested marks. And you won't really have to go for the contested ball as much. So we saw this with Aaron Hall last year. And also, obviously, we saw the really good scoring increase as well as durability. So another pro is that he is forward eligible. So we don't have a ton of forward options this year. So that means if he averages 100, which obviously is done tons of times before, he should be pretty close to the top of the forward line. So yeah, you're definitely going to want him in your finishing team if that's the case. Obviously this isn't considering the new DPP rule, which I mean I'll go and talk about in the cons. So next pro is value. So as a result of those injury affected games, he's priced at an average of just 99. So it's around 540k. So if he can stay uninjured for the whole year, I reckon 100% he's going to average higher than that. But I mean, he isn't as much value as maybe some people think. I mean, he still is the second most expensive forward. And I mean, as we're going to say in a bit, his durability isn't that good. And obviously, you have to factor that in when you're looking at players' prices and if they're value or not. Okay, so the last one is the extra trades. I reckon will you want him more as a starting pick because with injury-prone players, if you have more trades, it's obviously safer to pick them because you have more trades to get them out if obviously they get injured. So now that the trades have increased from 30 to 35, I definitely reckon starting more injury-prone players isn't a bad option. Okay, so we'll go into the cons. So the obvious one is durability. So, I mean, he's getting a bit older now. I think he's 30. He'll turn 31 during the season. So that's obviously increasing his injury risk. And also, last year was pretty shocking with, I think, the calf, as I said, in the preseason. And then the really worrying one is the PCL injury he had for a lot of the season. And I mean, that has a very high reoccurrence rate. So, yeah. Definitely durability is a big worry. Okay, so another con is the DPP rule changes. So now in round 6, 12 and 18, we'll get some new players with extra DPP. So I mean, we might get say Gawn, McInerney, or even maybe Fife in the forward line. Obviously it's not guaranteed, and there are probably other players who might become forward eligible as well. But yeah, if that does happen, they might definitely average as well, or maybe even better than Duncan. So obviously, as I was saying before, the Duncan would be biggest in the forward line for his average. That might not actually be the case. And now the last thing is ownership. So I've been pretty surprised not to see Duncan in many teams. So that means obviously you don't really want someone with bad durability who's a pod, because I mean, if they do get injured, you're just going to be way behind everyone else. So yeah. Okay, so now we're getting onto the verdict. So I reckon if you see him as the top, or at least in the top 3 for the forward line, obviously considering the DPP additions that we might get, I reckon you have to consider him in your starting team. I don't think you really want to be upgrading to him. So I think this is for 2 reasons. So one is you're getting the value of the starting price, obviously if you start him. And 2, if you trade him in later, you're only increasing the risk that he'll get injured. So obviously the reason that you didn't start him was durability. So I mean, I can't see the reason that you'd trade him in. So I see, like, if you want to start conservatively in the forward line because you want to wait and see who gets DPP, I think that that's a great strategy. In fact, that's absolutely fine. And if that means like not getting Duncan, yeah, I can see that. I'm considering that strategy at the moment as well. Yeah, so he's by no means a lock. Personally, he's in and out of my team at the moment. But if he gets that halfback role in the preseason, I think it'll definitely be hard to pass him up. I probably will get him. But that's the end of the video. Like, comment down below if you want to see any more player profiles or your thoughts on Duncan as well. So yeah, like and subscribe, and yeah, thanks for watching.